Hi, I'm Roger from Practically Outdoors, and today I'm going to show you the steps of reloading 40 Smith & Wesson. Stay tuned. So one of the first steps that I go through after I've been at the range and I picked a bunch of brass or I'm going to reload the brass that I've shot is I bring it home and I put it in one of these case tumblers, and it, through a process of just shaking and tumbling, it cleans the brass. Usually I'm using something like a, I don't know if you can see that, it's a walnut shell, crushed walnut shells in my tumbler, and these are all combined in the tumbler, and then I'll take and I'll dump all this through the screen, shake the screen, and I'm left with clean brass. Step 2 after cleaning the brass is to lay it all out on the table and look for anything that's cracked or damaged in a way that you don't want to reuse the shell again, because if it's got a crack in it, that means it could create a failure in your gun when you're going to go and shoot. And after that, the next step is punching out the old primers and resizing the shell. Resizing and getting rid of the old primer is as simple as slipping it in. Got my resizing die in here, and then there's a little punch in here, that this little pin. It drives out the primer out of the shell. So run it through once. Now the primer's gone, and I've resized the shell. So now I just go through a step of resizing multiple times. So I usually go through, I'll punch out 100 shells, or do them in lots of 50s or something like that. So you sit here and you just punch shell after shell after shell. Repeat 1,000 times if you shoot a lot on the weekends. So this is just a quick example. I'm going to punch out 20 rounds here to start with. So now I've done 20. So you can tell I've done 20 rounds. Next step is to reprime them. So I'm using CCI small pistol primers, number 500, and they come in 100 in a case. 100 primers, and I put them in this hand press. I don't want to lose them. Now when I put them in, they come out kind of, some are upside down, some are upside right, but these little grooves, these little ridges, I don't know how well you can see that. Those little ridges, when you shake your hand press, they grab the rough side of the primer, and they flip all of the primers over if I don't do it too hard, or a couple of seconds of shaking. They turn all the primers so that they're facing up like that. So now all my primers are facing up. I take and put the cover on, and then I slip it into my hand press. Open that up, shake the primers down inside, and then I squeeze the handle, and it takes and it puts a primer into, there's one that's not primed, put it in, squeeze, pull, check it that it's flat, same thing, repeat 20 times. 19, 20. That's 20 rounds. Next, I have a specific charge that I use in my powder thrower, and that is 4.5 grains of powder for a 40 Smith & Wesson. So I'm using tight group. I'm using Ogden tight group. and I use 4.5 grains of powder. Works really well in my Smith & Wesson. And I've set up on my little dial here, this little dial gauge. It's set for 4.5. And to ensure that, after I've thrown one charge, I throw it on my scale. And I wait for my scale to come up. And it zeroes in. So now I have 4.5 grains of powder. And I load that into my shells. I'll bring you around so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So now that this is working properly, throwing powder properly, I can take and I can charge all my shells. So I do that 20 times. I have 20 cases that have been reprimed, and now they've all been powdered. I'll give you a quick look down in the, you can see all the powder inside the shells. So they're all primed and ready to go. Okay, now that I've pressed out the primers and I've reprimed my gun, my shells, I'm going to change out my this is my resizer and priming die. I'm going to swap that out for my bullet seating die. And it's been preset to the depth that I press my bullets in with. So that's the bullet seating die. And it's all set. Final step is to seat the bullet into the casing. What I'm using 180 grain flat nosed copper plated bullet made by Campro. So take a case that's been charged, put a bullet with it, slip it in my press, and now I slide it up into my sizing die, seat it, and pull it out. And what I like to do is to ensure that it's set at the right depth. I've got a little micro tool, micrometer, and I measure, and I want to make sure I'm around 1.125 to 1.13 in depth. If I'm not quite deep enough, I take and I turn this little guy up here about 1/8 of a turn, and then I'll reseat my bullet. And now I'll measure one more time. I'm at 1.125. That's exactly where I want to be. 1.124, 125. I'm very happy with that. If I compress that any deeper into the shell, it's going to bring the pressures up, and I'll end up having too much pressure in my gun, and that's the one things you want to stay away from. So let's get a few more, and we'll press the last 20. And you can see that the process is, it's a little slow and tedious, but once you get a system set up, you can actually punch out a lot of bullets in a short time. You know, you got an afternoon. Today happens to be a rainy day. The weather's bad, so it was a good day to come inside and make some bullets. And 20. So that was round number 20. I'll take my micrometer one more time. See how they've been going. 1.1245. Yep, still right on. So that's good. So there, I've reloaded 20 rounds, 40 Smith & Wesson. Thanks for joining me. I hope this gave you a little bit of insight into reloading. So don't let it look daunting. Let it look like you're going to get into it for a whole lot of money. I mean, when it comes down to reloading, you can reload for about half the price of buying new. It's very inexpensive if you start reloading. You can bring your cost per shot down, way down, and help you enjoy the sport more. So thanks for joining me. I've been Roger from Practically Outdoors, and have fun. See you on the range.